Hey, y'all, each week on The Sam Sanders Show from KCRW, we ask big questions and share hot takes about the pop culture we love.
Now that we have YouTube, we don't need any more biopics. If they've been alive such that I can watch them on YouTube, I don't need it.
I don't think that music is getting worse. I think y'all just don't listen to artists who aren't in the mainstream.
Taylor Swift, retire. It's time to retire.
The Sam Sanders Show from KCRW, wherever you get your podcast, and on YouTube.
I realized that the melody to this symphony was borrowed in the score for Babe, the movie about the pig, and I just started bawling.
This is Life in 7 Songs from the San Francisco Standard. I'm Sophie Behrman. My guest this week is Andrew Ahn, the director and screenwriter behind feature films like Fire Island, Spa Night, and most recently a reimagined version of the 1993 classic The Wedding Banquet. All of these films tell queer Asian stories, something Andrew is committed to. Growing up, he often felt that his Korean American and queer identities were at odds with each other. But his success, Fire Island was nominated for 2 Emmys, has proven there is an audience for these nuanced stories, and he's really good at telling them. He's also directed both fiction and documentary television, including a few episodes of Bridgerton. Andrew Ahn, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm curious, what's the first movie you remember watching?
Oh my God. I actually, we were a Blockbuster rental family, like video rental store every week kind of family. And I remember watching things that my brother wanted to see. I have an older brother who's 4 or 5 years older. And so, like Attack of the Killer Tomatoes and, like silly things like that.
I don't think I've seen that one.
It's really funny. But yeah, like I just always remember loving film and being so excited that it was something that we did as a family, and it felt like an adventure. And so whether it was like watching it at home with caramel popcorn or going to the theater, I've always loved movies.
And I think I read that one of those films that your family rented was the 1993 film The Wedding Banquet, right? Which you recently remade. So, I mean, do you remember like actually watching that as a kid then, like in the living room? Tell me about that.
Yeah, I think I was probably 8 years old at the time. And, in retrospect, I realized that was the first gay film that I had ever seen, and I think it's incredibly meaningful that it happened to be a gay and Asian film, and a film where the gay characters are treated with respect and humanity. I was not aware of it at the time in any sort of conscious way, but I can't help but think that it set me on a certain path, to be the person that I am today, the filmmaker that I am today. It just happens to be such a fun coincidence in my life.
Do you remember if your parents liked it or how they reacted to the film?
Well, that was the funny thing, is that like my mom rented it not knowing that it was a queer film. She just knew that it was like an Asian film that white people in America were watching. And so she was really curious to see what it was about. And so rented it. And I remember no one debriefing. There wasn't a conversation after, And, I think for me, it made an impact, so much so that like I still remember that experience. But I talked to my mom more recently about this, after I've made my version of The Wedding Banquet, and my mom doesn't remember watching it. My dad does, but my mom, I think maybe she fell asleep or something. I don't know.
Speaking of your dad, he kind of inspired your first song, which is Simon and Garfunkel's Bridge Over Troubled Water. Yeah,
it's so funny. Being a Korean family, like karaoke was a part of our kind of culture. And my dad is a really wonderful singer and has a beautiful voice. And I remember as a kid him singing, Simon and Garfunkel, Bridge Over Troubled Water. And so I always had a lot of fondness for the song. And then, years later in film school, I'm preparing to make a short film about a traditional Korean first birthday ceremony. And as a part of my research, I decide to find the tape of my first birthday that my parents have. And on a cassette player during the birthday party, they're playing Simon and Garfunkel Bridge Over Troubled Water. I'm in my dad's arms, and in the Korean kind of tradition, I'm wearing a dolbok, which is kind of this rainbow colored hanbok, and I'm dancing, and my dad is watching me and singing along.
Let's watch a little bit. So sweet, Andrew.
Oh, yeah. I'm gonna cry. There's just something about, I love that moment where I look at my dad and he looks back at me, and there's something about that connection that feels like, oh, like I've always had that with my dad, and that feels so special to see at such a young age, and then kind of scored to this music. It's so cheesy in a way, the song, but it really speaks to me and kind of how my dad cares for me. My dad's a really wonderful father, and I think about how he's one of those people that really figures out how someone needs to be cared for, and he has shown that throughout my life and throughout my brother's life and my nephew and my niece. And so it's just something that I will always hold dear.
So you mentioned you came across this footage when you were making your short film Dole, which you made in 2012. And it's about a gay Korean man attending his nephew's first birthday party. And you actually cast your family in it.
Yeah. So, this is the kind of wild backstory of that short film, is that I was in film school. I was living with my family at the time, but, was kind of living a double life where I was out at film school and, going out to gay clubs with my friends, but I was very closeted at home with my parents. And I decided to make this film as a way to come out to them. And I was going to cast them in the movie so that I could not escape from, the fact that I would have to show them this movie eventually. My parents just thought it was about a first birthday party. They didn't know about the other scenes, where this character is with his partner. And so I put the film together and I showed it to them, and I told them that I was gay. And it was a very emotional experience. My mom was like, "Oh, did you make this film so that you could come out to us?" And I said, "Yeah." And she was like, "Oh God, like you didn't have to do all that, And it wasn't easy. Like, my dad said to me that he didn't know any, gay people in Korea. And is this just an American thing? And my mom was like, should we talk to a pastor? And there was a lot of confusion. What I was really moved by was that my parents wanted to talk to me. They wanted to continue to communicate. They weren't shutting me out. And in the 13, 14 years since that moment, my parents have become such incredible allies for me and are so supportive of me and, my partner and my career and the work that I do for queer cinema. But yeah, it was kind of a wild moment. What eventually happened is that short film got into Sundance, and then the Sundance press office asked me to write a piece about the inspiration for the film. And so I wrote about how I came out to my parents, and then they published it to the Huffington Post. And then I realized, oh no, I've just come out to the world well as my parents. And I have to say that, like, as scary as that was, it's been liberating in some ways, that like it's out there. I can't hide anymore. I can't go back into a closet. And it's really given me a lot of direction about the kind of films that I want to make.
So before you came out to your parents and the world, you were in college, also finding yourself as a filmmaker. Tell me about your next song, Maps by the Yeah Yeah Yeahs.
Yeah. So, I mean, like such an incredible song, just kind of first and foremost. And I think it was my winter break freshman year. And I was at home in LA and I watched the music video for Maps. And I'd never heard the song before. I didn't know who the Yeah Yeah Yeahs were. I didn't know who Karen O was. And I remember hearing the drums and just thinking, oh, like, what is this song going to be? And then when the guitar comes in, I was kind of surprised. And then when the vocals come in, I was surprised. The song evolves in such a unique way.
Oh, no. Oh, say, 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 oh, say, 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 oh, say, 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 oh, say, 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 oh, say, say, say. Wait, they don't love you like I love you. Wait, they don't love you like I love you.
God, so good. I love how hard on its sleeve the lyrics can be, but there's still so much of a raw edge and a punk sensibility, of course. And there's something about the longing in the lyrics and in the song that, as a closeted gay boy, you know, there's a kind of connection to. It just cuts straight to the soul. And there was something about that that really inspired me when I was just becoming an artist.
Okay, let's talk about your next song, which I'm very excited about. It's Everytime We Touch by Cascada. So is there a story behind this one? There must be.
Yeah. So in college, I was really going through, you know, the coming out process. And so I went to a coming out support group to kind of gain that strength and have that conversation. I also met a group of queer Asian people in a group called Pan Asian Queers, and they took me to my first gay club in Providence, Rhode Island. I went to Mirabar. I remember going there for the first time and hearing this song. It's just everything I want from gay music. You know, it's just like a dance beat, but then incredibly sentimental lyrics.
Without you, it's hard to survive. 'Cause every time we touch,
So dramatic,
I get
right?
this feeling, and every time we kiss, I swear I could fly. Can't you feel my heart beat fast? I want this to last. Need you by my side.
And it's like every time, like, need you, can't survive, right? Like it's so hyperbole, but I think that that's what going to a gay club, especially I think when you're 22, like it feels like, right? And I remember turning to my friend Terrence and, you know, saying, oh, I love this song, but it was so loud at the club that he couldn't hear me. And so he just
Yep.
was like, oh, okay, sure. And then our other friend did this like gay club sign language where he was like, I pointed at himself, love, little hearts with the hands, this, and then pointed at the speaker, this song. And our friend Terrence was like, yeah, me too. And I was like, oh my God. And so there's just something about that moment where I learned that, oh my God, like gay culture is a thing, you know, like there's a whole nother language, there's like a whole new environment. And so this song is really tied to my queer coming of age. I'm such an idiot at a club now where I'm just kind of like moodily drinking, you know, because I just feel a little older and not hip enough. But if this song comes on, I will rush the dance floor.
After a quick break, we'll get to know Andrew's hopeless romantic side. We'll be right back. Hey everyone, I want to recommend a podcast. Hard Knocks is a show about resilience, self-discovery, and finding meaning after chaos, hosted by Amanda Knox. Each week, Amanda sits down with fascinating guests, writers, thinkers, artists, to explore how we learn, grow, and rebuild ourselves after life knocks us down. Amanda brings humor, honesty, and hard-earned perspective to every conversation, drawing on her own experience of being wrongfully convicted and rebuilding her life. Amanda was a guest on Life in 7 Songs in one of our most moving episodes, opening up about how music became a lifeline during her years of wrongful imprisonment. On our show, she spoke candidly about turning pain into wisdom and also about how we're all so much more than our worst moments. If you liked that episode, you'll love her show, available wherever you listen to podcasts.
I'm Jesse Alejandro Cottrell.
And I'm Emily Dreyfus, and this is Pacific Standard Time.
We have stories from all over the state of California, all the big battles that are happening here.
Prop 50,
housing affordability,
tech,
and immigration.
And we're really excited to bring you the stories about how California is dealing with what it means to be alive in 2025.
Subscribe to Pacific Standard Time, a new weekly show from the San Francisco Standard.
We'll have new episodes every Wednesday starting November 19th, wherever you get your podcasts.
So what was your love life like then? Were you dating in college?
So actually, my very first boyfriend was someone that I met through this Pan-Asian queer organization. And I thought he was so cute. You know, I had girlfriends in high school because I was kidding myself. I was a little delusional, but, you know, he was kind of my first love. And then he went to study abroad and I was still on campus and we were kind of doing this long distance thing. And then he broke my heart. First heartbreak. And I think this leads us to our next song.
I think it does. Ray by Amy Mann, right?
Yeah. I was such a Amy Mann fanatic in college. It was really weird. I had watched the film Magnolia the summer before college, and I loved it. And I loved the soundtrack, and I just loved this kind of confessional songwriting. It really felt like I was getting insight from an artist. And I remember, you know, listening to the song Ray and really enjoying it, but it wasn't until my college boyfriend broke up with me that I listened to the song. And I remember like walking home and just like sobbing. There was something about it that resonated with me so much.
Do you remember what lyrics or what part of the song really felt like they were written for you in that moment?
The chorus, of course, it's like, I'm playing it cool, but it's terribly cruel because I ought to be there, you know, like there, especially with my boyfriend he was in Hong Kong, so he was abroad, and I wanted to be close to him to kind of talk through this. And then there's this kind of incredible, maybe you would call it a bridge, but like, because you're as bad off as me, it's like we were both kind of disasters and we could help each other, you know, that's kind of how I felt. But we had to go on our own.
I'm playing it cool, but it's terribly cruel, 'cause I ought to be there. Ray, what can I say?
God, like the next few lines after that, like, can we repay ourselves for days that we've lost through indecision with one of recognition? If so, then here I go, 'cause some things you know and some you just believe in and hope it comes out even. You know, just like what incredible songwriting to describe this very transitional moment in a relationship where you have to go from such intimacy to now having to not be together. She really gets at just the complicated, nuanced feelings of knowing that you can't be with this person, but still feeling connected to them in some way. Every time I listen to it, I'm back in college.
So we've been talking a lot about college years. Obviously, you were studying filmmaking, making short films. I also studied filmmaking in undergrad, but was too scared to actually pursue it. So I went into video journalism. How did you decide to take the leap and say, no, I'm going to do this?
It's so funny. I did an internship in college where I worked for NPR, KCRW. And so radio and news and journalism, like that was something that I had thought about as well. I decided to focus on film because it just really captured my attention and my curiosity in this way that I couldn't deny.
And your next song intersects with when you were directing Bridgerton. It's Symphony No. 3 in C minor by Camille Saint-Saëns.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
Saint-Saëns, yeah, French.
Saint-Saëns. What's the story behind this one?
Yeah, I love Bridgerton, and I remember getting the email, asking if I wanted to consider directing for season 3, and I was like, yes, I want to meet. I loved being able to kind of have my Regency era Jane Austen fantasy. So I went to London and directed 2 episodes of season 3 and was in London for a number of months. And I was pretty homesick, actually. But, my parents came to visit, and I was living just north of Hyde Park. And then just south of Hyde Park is Royal Albert Hall. And my parents have always been really supportive of my love for classical music, and growing up in LA, they took me to the Hollywood Bowl, and we just always enjoyed going to concerts together. And so I was like, let me just buy tickets to whatever is happening at Royal Albert Hall while they're there. And so we went, and it was kind of terrible seats because Royal Albert Hall is shaped like an oval. We were kind of like behind the orchestra and like next to the organ. But it was actually kind of incredible because we were right next to the organ for an organ symphony. I remember, the orchestra started playing and I was really locked in. My parents were extremely soothed by it to the point where they fell asleep. And I think they were also kind of jet lagged. And the organist just sat there like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. And I was like, when is he going to play? Like, this is an organ symphony. And the orchestra quiets down kind of 10 minutes in. And the organist plays the very first note. And the room shakes. It's just this like crazy, crazy chord that, it doesn't sneak up on you. It actually just attacks you. And I looked at my parents and it jolted them awake. And we kind of laughed about it because it was so funny that they had fallen asleep. Can't get more majestic than that, and to have the organ just like vibrating next to you, like I am just physically, literally moved by it. And then I realized that the melody to this symphony was borrowed in the score for Babe, the movie about the pig. And that just triggers this like intense nostalgia response. And I just start bawling. I'm like crying at Royal Albert Hall because of this organ symphony and because of Babe. It was just kind of incredible. And, to share that moment with my parents was super special.
Babe is like my mom and my favorite movie. So I'm 100% there with you. And we're always like, Ba Ramu, we're just
I love
like
it.
weird. Yeah.
Incredible.
It's great. Your next song is Self-Control by Frank Ocean. Where does this one take you?
I have such a weird kind of life rhythm as a filmmaker where you go from project to project. And these projects can take you to different cities for a year. And so it feels like episodes, it's not like I have the same day-to-day job for years of my life. And so I was in New York working on my second feature, Driveways, and I was listening to so much Frank Ocean. I just was like demolishing those two albums, just like on loop. And this particular song really resonated with me, I think because I was with my current partner, but very early in our relationship, and we were doing distance kind of for the first time. And I think the distance was revealing certain differences in how we felt about love and relationships. And this song kind of captured a bunch of different insights that felt like so relevant to my life.
Noses on a rail, little virgin wears the white. You cut your hair, but you used to live a blinded life. Wish I was there, wish we'd grown up on the same advice. And our time was right.
That line, wish I was there, wish we'd grown up on the same advice. There was something about the conversations that I was having with my boyfriend about love and relationships and how we were going to navigate this distance. And I realized, like we had kind of different expectations, and I'm kind of a romantic and he's kind of a pragmatist, and, even just marriage, right? I'm pretty pro marriage and he is not. And so there was this like yearning that I had, where it's like, oh, I wish we had grown up the same way, because maybe we'd feel the same way about relationships and this could be easier. What I've come to appreciate since then is that I think it's actually the differences in how, my partner and I think about relationships and love that make our relationship really strong and interesting and really worth working on. Very wildly, this song shares a producer with the Amy Mann Ray song.
No way.
John Bryan. And actually, like, just looking at all of these songs, I will say there's something kind of just very heart forward about them, right?
Yeah. To come full circle, why did you want to remake The Wedding Banquet now?
The original film by Ang Lee balanced like so many beautiful themes of culture and sexuality, family and love. And I wanted to address how things have changed for the queer community, since 1993, that have added some new wrinkles to those themes. Gay marriage being legalized in the US and having friends have children. And so instead of accidentally having a baby, what if I showed a queer couple trying to plan to have a baby? There was so much that I was inspired by, conversations with my boyfriend, with my partner, about how we wanted to build the rest of our lives. Like any gay millennial couple, I suppose, like there are so many questions because we have the choice now. And when we were growing up, we didn't realize we would have that choice. And so that burden of choice is something, we, are still navigating.
And your last song is connected to a memory with your partner. What is it?
Yeah, so it's Hanataba wo Kimi ni by Utada Hikaru. They're a Japanese artist, and my partner is Japanese American. And just last year, he had kind of impulsively entered a lottery to see if he could get tickets to one of Utada Hikaru's concerts, assuming that he wouldn't get it, and then he did. And so then he was like, oh God, like, do you want to go to Japan? And I was like, yeah, great. And so to go to Japan together for the first time and have him show me around, it felt incredibly meaningful. And so we went to this concert, and even though I didn't know the lyrics, I didn't understand because I don't speak Japanese. There was something about the melody of this song that really resonated with me. after the concert, I just kind of kept listening to it, and I looked up the lyrics, and it's an incredibly emotional song about kind of saying goodbye to someone. And Utada Hikaru had written it about their mother and saying goodbye because their mother had passed away. You know, again, that kind of unabashed emotionality really struck me. And so I listened to the song over and over to the point where I kind of learned it phonetically. And then one day we were in the car, my partner and I, and the song came on, and I started to sing along to it, and he got really emotional and was so moved by the fact that I was so inspired by something that he showed me that I had kind of brought it into my life and, you know, for myself.
When did you know that you loved him, like that he was the one?
Oh. You know, I'll say my partner and I were friends for many years, actually, before we started dating. And that was actually what was so fun about my Bridgerton episodes, was because, you know, the story of Colin and Penn is friends to lovers, you know. I think that there was just this really slow but steady progression for us, you know, kind of growing closer and closer. It kind of snuck up on us in some ways, the relationship. You know, it just felt so organic, something that he's unlocked for me, and I think is very apparent in my work, and even just in these 7 songs that I've chosen, is to not be afraid of how you feel. You know, that you should embrace your feelings, especially as a queer person. Like, there's so much compartmentalizing that you're doing when you're young, you know? And my hope is for everyone that we don't have to feel like compartmentalized versions of ourselves, that we can feel like an organic whole. And I think that that's something that I've been inspired by my partner to do, and I've been practicing with him.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for sharing your 7 songs with us.
No, thank you. It's really fun. And I'm kind of curious what happens in another 3-4 decades, if I'll have a new batch. We'll see.
For sure. Yeah, we can circle back about that. Life in 7 Songs is a production from the San Francisco Standard. If you liked this episode, tune in next week for my conversation with Michael Schur. That's the writer behind shows like Parks and Rec and The Good Place. These are comedies that make you laugh and pull on your heartstrings. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and review the show. It makes a big difference for us. Senior producer is Jasmine Morris. Our producers are Michelle Land. She also mixes the show, and Tessa Kramer. Theme music by Kate Davis and Zubin Hensler. Jess Hutchison created our show art. Our music consultant is Sarah Tembekshian. As always, you can find this guest's full playlist at sf.news/Spotify. I'm Sophie Behrman. Thank you for listening, and I will see you next week.